Hello and welcome to another edition of Midlands Business Update. This week we're turning the spotlight on the implications of George Osborne's budget on the local business community with a helping hand from 4 Black Country business people. Now they say the devil's always in the detail of these speeches. Well, local companies have had little more than a week now to pore over the small print, such as it is. So let's see what they make of it. Joining us in the first half of the show are Black Country Chamber of Commerce President Ninder Johal and John Chew from Sandwell College, who sits on the Chamber's Consultative Forum. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Ninder, let's just start with you. I mean, actually going back to Budget Day, when you listened to it the first time you'd heard it, what was your initial response?
I think I spotted 3 things which were of interest. Firstly, I didn't hear anything about international trade, and I thought that was significant because if we're going to rebalance the economy, then international trade normally is a great route out. Why it's of importance to us in the Black Country is we manufacture, and that tends to, when we tend to manufacture goods that are exportable. So that was the first thing. The second thing was around skills. There's always this numbers, 2 million, now we're going to get 3 million apprenticeships. I still thought there was a lack of detail as to what that actually means. And I don't like numbers, I would prefer quality. So 3 million apprentices, so what? It's how good they are. The third thing that struck me was infrastructure, general infrastructure. Talked about vehicle excise, but we didn't get any detail, and I think we still haven't had much detail on what that means for infrastructure in terms of roads. I just about made it in time. That's because I was wrestling through the traffic in the Black Country. HS2 is around the corner, but what does it mean for the Black Country? So those are sort of the 3 sort of key areas I saw. And I suppose my only other observation was he did refer to the Northern Powerhouse. He mentioned the word, sort of implied the word queue. And what he was trying to say was that for those in the queue, if you want devolved powers, and that's a big question mark in itself, then you better start sorting your act out. So those are the general macro picture that I sort of painted.
And you mentioned specifically training there, and I guess, John, with wearing your Chairman of Governors at Sandwell College hat, that's the big flashing light that came out of the budget from your point of view, is it?
Yes, it was. You said the devil is in the detail, but I'm afraid we still haven't got a lot of the detail yet. Ninder made mention of the fact that we're now looking at 3 million apprentices, but apprenticeships in what is my question. I think the things that are emerging now are that the government will be looking at higher level, i.e. more skilled apprentices, probably taking longer, but there have to be jobs there for those people because an apprentice is a trainee on the job, really. As I say, there's still a lot of uncertainty. He announced a levy on larger employers. Those employers are still waiting to hear exactly what that means.
And what is a larger employer, of course? That's open to debate as well, isn't it?
It can be open to debate, yeah. There is, various definitions, but we'll see what emerges. So I think I was reading something yesterday that the chief exec of Carillion, which is a large company, basically had their own plans to increase their number of apprenticeships, but now they've sort of put that on hold until the detail comes out. So it's still a bit of uncertainty. It's what the levy will be, how it will be applied. We know there's going to be a voucher system, but what will it mean in detail, and how will this flow through the system?
What do you think the general perception of apprenticeships in their current format is out there at the moment?
I think to a degree, there's talk about the government, if you like, using a sort of a trademark for apprenticeships to actually specify what they do mean, because it's a term that's thrown around and can mean different things to different people. What has happened in the fairly recent past is that people already employed within a business have suddenly become an apprentice, and that may be somebody in their 40s and 50s. Now it seems to be the push is to make it applicable at younger ages to get people into employment, but obviously there is a business need. Business cries out for better skills, and we hear about skills gaps and so on. It'll be interesting to see how it actually translates in practice.
I think, Ninder, that's one of the things that's been coming out of not just this budget, but budgets for quite a few years. We wait for the detail, then we don't get too much of the detail. A lot of the headlines are dripped out before the actual budget speech is given. It's not such a massive deal anymore, is it, the budget?
Yeah, again, I think John's right. The budget, as we heard it, raised more questions than answers. I found it interesting that a government that believes in supplying an environment that's conducive for business, and their main ethos is that we keep clear of the marketplace. Interesting that they then deemed it right to intervene and place a levy on businesses. There's no consultation as far as I know, and there was almost a shift from the right to the centre as they started to encroach on grounds that normally Labour would fulfil. So you did wonder, half of it was political manoeuvrings and half of it was economic. So it was interesting to watch from a distance as to how the movement's happening. And of course, somebody used a fantastic word, that the Tories have just placed the tanks on the lawns of Labour. So it was a benevolent manoeuvrings, and maybe it's Osborne thinking 5 years' time, I want to be the next PM. So it was an interesting political and economic debate, really.
One of the things that jumped out for me was the statement that there will be 1 million new jobs created by 2020, I think George Osborne said, because we've seen unemployment figures go up this week for the first time. How can they predict something like that? There are so many different imponderables, aren't there, involved?
I think it's dangerous to put too much credence in them. You can have objectives, and the big objective at the moment is to improve the country's productivity. That's what's really the headline is at the moment. How do you do that? And the thought seems to be to go for, obviously, a higher skilled workforce, which is quite right if we aim to compete. But numbers, Ninder said a bit earlier, he doesn't like the numbers, he likes to think about quality. And I'd rather have 2 million at high quality than 3 million at a so-so quality. And I think it's a bit dangerous because political manoeuvrings can mean that things are done to get the numbers there, and reality intervenes and employers may still not be happy with what's coming out at the end.
Well, look at the number of times that they've slightly tweaked the way they actually produce or analyse or present figures to us.
I think the other worry is that what you can't do is you can't assume that the business community is homogenous, all the same. And of course, you could argue it's fine to place a levy or a living wage amongst the bigger employers, but those in hospitality, those in catering, those who run retail outlets, can they afford £9, whatever the rate will be eventually? And well, on one hand, we have a raise in the minimum wage or the living wage, but actually, perhaps we're going to have fewer people taken on. That might raise productivity, but would you like higher productivity? But a lot of people are unemployed, as is the case in France.
Well, of course, I mean, in the run to the election, there was a lot of talk about 0 hours contracts, and that's a one-size-fits-all, isn't it? There are some industries, like if you're selling ice creams in the summer, it doesn't work. The same system doesn't work for everyone, does it? So
I think one of the other things, we heard a budget speech, but so much of that had been trailed beforehand. In the old days, whatever that means, it used to be that the Chancellor went into purdah, didn't do any interviews, no headlines in the press, it was all speculation. Now what seems to happen is we don't just have one budget, we have two, we have an autumn statement, then we have a spending review, we have a series of things, and I think what you need to try and understand is how all those things fit together, or in some cases don't fit together. And the fact that they drip feed some of these things is to take the heat out of the situation in a lot of ways. There were some surprises, I think, the living wage.
That was the big headline.
That was the
rabbit out of the hat, probably, wasn't it?
Yeah. The implications of that, as Ninder just said, will that actually cause some employers, maybe in retail, maybe in hospitality, to look at things and say, £9 an hour is actually too much as a base for us. And what happens above that level?
What's the general feeling in the Black Country Chamber among the membership at the moment about not just the budget announcement, but the state of the local economy at the moment?
Well, we're quite fortunate in the Black Country. We're the second highest performing LEP area in the country of the 39 LEPs. In terms of GVA growth, we've had a 4.3% increase. The Black Country can also boast of a highly efficient automotive sector. Aerospace is doing well. We've had Wiggly's on e-commerce, just generated, I think it's 400 jobs. Land Rover doubling the amount of people they're employing at the I-54. So listen, it's all good news in the Black Country. Of course, the Black Country has been cited a number of times in the House of Commons as an area that is definitely on the up. So as an area of confidence, yeah, we've got much to boast about, and the future looks good, but challenges remain the same, infrastructure, skills, as John said. We still lament over the fact that central government still decided that Birmingham Airport wasn't important enough for them. So again, from our perspective, do you really want a balanced economy? The symbols don't show it. Do you want, where we are certainly located in the middle, we've got much more to offer, but sometimes we do feel we're sandwiched in between the northern powerhouse and the very wealthy south. And really we could do with a more devolved power, so we could actually reach an even better potential than we have at the moment.
What we need then is a Midlands powerhouse mentioned in the next budget, don't we?
Well, they're calling it the Midlands engine.
Indeed.
So we're hoping we'll lobby that will be mentioned next time.
Gents, thank you for your thoughts. We'll have more budget chat with two more Black Country businessmen after the break. Welcome back to Midlands Business Update, which this week is taking a look at what the budget has offered for local companies. I'm joined now by Jonathan Dudley of Crowe Clark Whitehill and Jack Kelly from National Express. Gentlemen, thank you. You're the next two victims in the hot seat. I've got to start with transport, really, from the National Express point of view. That presumably was the big thing you were looking for in the budget first and foremost, was it?
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to see what was going to be said around transport, and I think the announcement that there will be a special roads fund that will help address some of the issues on the roads is very important and quite significant to us. You know, pinch points, potholes, etc., do take a toll on both our vehicles and our service to customers. So that's quite good. But we were also quite glad to see the living wage mentioned, as we've already pledged to pay the higher living wage from next year as a major employer. So I think anything that encourages people to follow our lead is obviously a good thing.
Has that sort of thing helped you to recruit more staff or staff easily or better staff? Has that been a real selling point then for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's both helped in terms of recruitment, but I think it'll help in terms of retention and obviously morale as well. Staff have welcomed it across the board, as have the unions. In fact, it's had a universally positive impact, really.
Mm. And so you're based at Digbeth, are you?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
And how's business for your company in general? Then,
Things are going well. There's the beginning of the year has been very, very good. We've had some good news in terms of our expansion into German rail and some of our work within the Middle East. Actually, we're a business based in Birmingham that's growing internationally, which is something obviously we're very proud of, and we want to, sort of help the region more in terms of raising that sort of profile.
Presumably not seeing fuel duty rise was a good one as well, was it? So.
Absolutely, yeah, that's always very welcome.
Mm. And Jonathan, I guess you're looking at the budget more from a sort of number crunching point of view behind the scenes. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah.
What jumped out for you?
Well, I spent a lot of my time advising particularly manufacturing businesses and small and medium-sized enterprises. I think the new dividend tax, certainly a lot of owner-managed businesses have been rewarding or paying their owners more in dividends, probably for 10 years or so now, because it's been more beneficial. The introduction of the new dividend tax narrows the gap. It doesn't close it altogether, but it will raise a lot of questions, especially we're waiting for the detail, still haven't got it. But this £5,000 tax-free allowance is going to present lots of, maybe planning opportunities, maybe problems for people going forward.
Did you see it coming? Did it surprise you?
I did, yeah. I've been predicting that it perhaps needed looking at for some considerable length of time, because there's a certain class of individual managed to not pay national insurance of any magnitude for a long time. So the self-employed have had a much cheaper time for a long time. And I did think that if the Chancellor was trying to raise some money, that was where he might look first.
Because one of the interesting things we've now got with the announcement over the likes of corporation tax coming down, I think it's at 19 and then 18% by 2020, you've got a complete disparity you're going to have now between income tax, corporation tax.
For the first time in a long time, yeah. And it was trilled as being, the real benefit of, we're open for business in the UK. That's absolutely right, but of course it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because in the same budget he announced the new rates for annual investment allowances, those are capital allowances. At the moment, until December this year, you can spend up to £500,000 on capital assets and get straight 100% tax relief. That was due to come down to 25,000. It's now only coming down to 200,000. first reaction to that is that's great, so that people can continue to invest in capital investment. But of course, over time, as with other allowances like research and development allowances, they're very attractive too. But if you lower the headline rate of corporation tax, what people always forget is you lower the rate of corporation tax, the rate of these incentive reliefs falls at the same time. But the Chancellor wouldn't mention that, would he?
That wouldn't be in the headline figure necessarily, would it?
But there is a very significant point there, it always used to be that income tax generally was less than corporation tax for a very, very long time. Dating back to almost the pre-Thatcher years when income tax was a very high rate. But now, so it would appear, it's going to be cheaper to leave money in companies than to take it out over time. Do
you think people will cotton on to that quickly, or do you think it's just made the whole thing a little bit more complicated?
Well, it does make it very much more complicated, but there's dare I say it, it's a bad phraseology, I suppose, but there's poverty traps in the tax sphere. I call it the tax mountain range all over the place now. It used to be very, very simple. It does make it more complicated. It could mean, of course, that it's a signal that the basic rate of income tax isn't intended to stay at 20% either. That'd be nice. That would be, 1% or 2% reduction in income tax would make everyone smile.
It would indeed, yeah. I mean, obviously, personal allowances have gone up for the standard and the 40% bracket, which helps. But there seems to be always a perception that the longer people take to actually digest what's happened, the less optimistic they seem to be.
And what people always forget with the personal allowances going up and the top rate of tax moving up, and the rate beyond which you pay tax going up, what a lot of people forget is the highest rate of tax effectively of income tax in the UK is currently not 45%, it's actually 60%. And that's the band between £100,000 of income. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But hey-ho. The band between £100,000 worth of income and wherever the basic rate band cuts multiplied by 2. Because once you go beyond £100,000 worth of income, then the Chancellor takes 50 pence of your personal allowance away. So the effective rate in that band is 60%. So if he makes the personal allowance bigger, he's making that band bigger. And that really does cause some problems for people, in theory, with high income earners. You might say, well, serves them darn well right. But then once they get beyond that band, it drops down to 45% again.
Now,
how odd.
Well, how about this for a question? These lucky people that are earning £100,000 plus.
Then 45. I apologise.
These lucky people that are earning 100,000 plus. Do you think they're going to be persuaded to spend more money on a Sunday? This consultation period that's coming. What did you think about in general Sunday trading? Does it affect your business really with that?
We're going to obviously have a look at some of the figures around and try and predict what it would do to our business. I think anything that prolongs the shopping day, makes it easier for people to travel, makes it more pleasant for people to travel because there's not going to be one set sort of rush. It spreads rush hour out in the morning, and especially I think on a Sunday as people have slower starts to the day will probably make it a nicer proposal to go into town and do some shopping. So anything that should drum up trade is good for us, really.
Do you think it's almost inevitable because of the way the world has moved these days? There's people shopping online on Christmas Day, aren't there now, looking at the sales? It's not as rigid as it used to be, is it?
I think anything that promotes the high street and more sort of traditional retail has to be looked at and welcomed. Obviously, with online shopping being as easy as it is, and obviously with more and more people looking to sort of find deals online, as you say, people even shopping on Christmas Day online. I think anything that makes the high street more sort of a positive experience for people and makes it more attractive, we should do it.
I imagine that I'm trying to find smooth links into each little topic here, and I'm struggling, but I imagine that you transport quite a few students around the country.
Yeah.
Student grants versus student loans was one of the other big things that came out of the budget. This idea that bursaries will now start to disappear and loans are now coming in. People are getting quite hot under the collar about this and about sort of just how much that's going to damage young people's careers. Views on that, gents, at all?
In my business, I employ a lot of people who've gone through further education and also a hell of a lot of people fresh out of university. And in some cases, I actually advise some people who've come out of university and they're paying off student loans. And dare I say it, my son's in that position as well. And the way it works is it's an effective additional tax. And there's two issues here. Is that graduates then command a higher salary, perhaps even than the market would dictate normally, coming out of university, because they need the, shall we say, net spendable income to live. And their effective rate of income tax, because of repaying student loans once they earn good money, has to be more. And then, of course, it's so much more tempting then to say, actually, I'll employ a non-graduate because I can get them a lot cheaper. And they're a lot happier because their net spendable income is as good or better even.
And then it distorts, presumably, the number of people that are going on to further education and the number of job opportunities that are there for them at the other end. Do you employ quite a lot of graduates then?
Yeah, we've got a graduate scheme within each individual business. And in fact, this year in the local West Midlands business, we've taken on our first engineering graduate. So looking at actually getting people straight into the engineering department. Obviously, it's an area that's, it's, when we were talking earlier in the show about skills, I think actually engineering graduates have been probably a bit overlooked, and especially in our sector, so we're quite proud of that.
And final question, a very quick answer from both of you. The austerity targets, are they too stiff? Are they fair? What do you think?
You'd expect the accountant to say that you've got to pay your way, wouldn't you? And in actual fact, if you look in the Red Book, as it's called, and you look at the fact we are still budgeting for a deficit.
Jonathan, Jack, thank you very much, and Ninder and John as well. Thanks to everyone for their insight in our programme this week. Don't forget, if you've got an issue you'd like to raise, send us an email, business@bigcentre.tv.